How are you today, sir? I'm Robert Bonta.
Yeah, pleasure. Nice to see you.
Attorney General Rob, pleasure to see you
Good to see
again.
you again. Good to see you again.
Hey, how are you doing today? Good to see you, David.
All right, good morning. My apologies for the late start. We'll get into it here. Good morning, everyone. Rob Bonta, California Attorney General. Thank you all for joining us today as we announce an important agreement that we've reached with the City of Vallejo and the Vallejo Police Department. Before we get into the details, I want to first welcome and thank Vallejo Mayor Robert McConnell and Vallejo Police Department Interim Chief Jason Ta, who are both up here with me and will be providing their own remarks shortly. I'd also like to thank those involved who helped make the announcement possible, and it was many. Thanks to all of them. My colleagues in the California Department of Justice's Civil Rights Enforcement Section, or CRES, including Danielle O'Bannon, our Chief of the Public Rights Division, Damon Brown, Special Assistant Attorney General, Michael Newman, Senior Assistant Attorney General, Nancy Beninati, our Supervising Deputy Attorney General, and Deputy Attorneys General Joshua Piovia Scott, Allison Elgart, and Gabriel Martinez. Thanks to the whole team to help get us to the point where we are today. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge from Vallejo, Vice Mayor Rosana Verder Aliga, City Manager Michael Malone, City Attorney Veronica Nebb, Chief Assistant City Attorney Randy Reisner, Assistant City Manager Terrence Davis, as well as all of the public safety professionals in Vallejo who will be instrumental in implementing the reforms we are talking about today. Each of us is here because we are committed to serving and protecting the members of this community. The residents of Vallejo deserve nothing less. I'm proud to announce that California Department of Justice has entered into a stipulated judgment with the City of Vallejo and the Vallejo Police Department regarding needed and necessary reforms to the police department's policies and practices. The documentation is being filed as we speak in Solano Superior Court. This new agreement builds off of reforms and improvements that began with a previous agreement we came to in 2020, June 5th, 2020. That original agreement expired in June of 2023 and kickstarted the productive, sometimes challenging, but always necessary discussions that brought us to the agreement that we have arrived at today. At its core, this new agreement is about building and strengthening trust between the Vallejo Police Department and the communities it serves. It's about correcting injustices and enhancing public safety for all people in Vallejo. It's about ensuring that the Vallejo Police Department listens to the people they serve and upholds their civil rights and their constitutional rights. It's about adding oversight by the courts to ensure accountability. Let me say it again, the residents of Vallejo deserve nothing less. This agreement ensures they'll get all of that and more. The original agreement from 2020 included 45 recommendations necessary to reform, improve, and modernize the Vallejo Police Department's policies and practices around use of force, community engagement, bias, accountability, transparency. For example, this included reforms regarding Vallejo's response to officer-involved shootings, community input into critical incident reviews, and diversity in recruitment and in hiring. To date, the Vallejo Police Department has substantially complied with 20 of the 45 recommendations. Progress for sure, but also not enough. We can't allow for lapses in improvement. We need to keep moving forward, continuing to make that progress. We can't allow for complacency. The people of Vallejo deserve a police department that listens to them and guarantees that their civil rights are protected. Again, we'll accept nothing less. This new agreement outlines a comprehensive 5-year plan that requires the Vallejo Police Department to comply with all 45 of the original reforms and implements additional necessary reforms related to bias, use of force, and searches, seizures, and arrests. One key aspect of this judgment is the establishment of an oversight and reform evaluator. This evaluator will independently assess if the Vallejo Police Department is complying with the agreement and provide technical assistance as they work to implement the reforms. This agreement establishes that the evaluator and the court will have oversight and ensure compliance. So just to be real clear here, the 45 original recommendations were part of an MOU. There was no stipulated judgment, there was no court oversight, there was no evaluator. So that is different here. We have accountability components here where the court and the evaluator will both help ensure the implementation of the recommendations here and the changes going forward. In addition to the 45 original reforms, this new agreement requires ongoing audits of incidents where an officer points or brandishes a firearm at or in the presence of a community member, ensuring that the newly implemented use of force and officer-involved shooting policies are adhered to. Review of the Vallejo Police Department's policies, practices, and trainings around force instruments, and updates to the policies to ensure they align with best practices of constitutional policing. It requires that officers and supervisors are held accountable for not identifying, adequately investigating, or addressing unreasonable force. It requires a commitment to providing bias-free services and enforcing laws in a way that is professional, non-discriminatory, fair, and equitable, and ensures that stops, searches, and seizures all comply with the law. It requires the development of a policy that defines and limits the use of pretextual stops, and requires the enhancement and revision of training with respect to investigatory stops. It requires that officers are prohibited from conducting consent searches during consensual encounters. It requires the department to work with the new evaluator to develop a policy and protocol for responding to calls involving a person in mental health crisis or suffering from a mental health disability. This includes utilizing professional civilian staff trained in responding to mental health crises, and explores models for community-based first responder crisis intervention teams. It requires the police department to enhance, promote, and strengthen partnerships with the community to ensure collaborative problem solving and bias-free policing, and to increase transparency and community confidence. It allows my office to seek court enforcement of the terms of the judgment in the event the city or the police department fall short on their commitments outlined in the agreement. Again, that accountability component. And it requires the department to utilize its Chiefs Advisory Board and the Police Oversight and Accountability Commission to continue to develop and amend significant policies that impact the community. That includes its use of force policies, community policing strategy, and policies, bias-free policing policies, and civilian complaint policies. So as you can tell, this is very comprehensive. That's a long list of reforms and commitments, changes on a go-forward basis. All of it is critical to ensuring the police department aligns with contemporary best practices and upholds the rights of all community members. This work isn't easy, and it's rarely straightforward. I'd like to thank the Vallejo Police Department for their cooperation, their collaboration, their partnership, and their commitments, for their willingness to reflect on their shortcomings and commitment to take real action to do better, to improve. This work and these reforms, they're both needed and they are necessary. They're geared to make Vallejo policing more effective, more efficient, more fair, and more just. Californians are hurting. Trust has been broken, and it won't be repaired overnight. But it can and will be repaired if we work together, if we make go-forward commitments to do better. If we all, police departments, city governments, the California DOJ, commit to actively listen to and engage with the communities that we serve. If we commit to put our shared mission of ensuring public safety and equal protection for every Californian above all else. With this agreement, Vallejo is committing to that. It's recommitting itself to the people it serves. And today, I'm here to emphasize that the DOJ is committed to staying engaged and ensuring a fair, thorough, and transparent process. With this agreement, we're taking another step toward correcting injustices, building trust, and enhancing public safety, and we're doing it together. So with that, thank you. And before we open it up for questions, I'll turn it over to Vallejo Mayor Robert McConnell.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming here, making the effort to be here. We do greatly appreciate it. I would like to just comment on this briefly. And as mayor of this large interurban metropolitan city, which is faced with unique and many challenges, it is my honor and indeed a privilege to express thanks and appreciation to a great team of public-spirited, talented lawyers from both the California Attorney General's office, led by Rob Bonta, and the City of Vallejo City Attorney's office, led by Veronica Nebb. Also, I wish to express appreciations to our city manager, Mike Malone, the interim chief of police, Jason Taw, and Captain Knight, who was instrumental in helping bring this about. Together, they have taken the needed time under pressure to reach what will likely become an historical document, to reach what will likely become a roadmap as we build together the successful transformation of the Vallejo Police Department into the first California Police Department to be a daily living example of the highest level of police professionalism in the state of California. We expect no less. Police reform, consisting of a change in daily culture, is not easy. It is often said that culture will eat programs for breakfast. As we progressively but steadily make these changes, small and large, it will demand the full attention and understanding of the citizens of Vallejo, the state, and indeed the world, all of whom are watching the Vallejo Police Department as we speak. It is with indeed deep personal pleasure that I can announce the 100% support of this move forward from the Vallejo City Council. The city manager, city attorney, and chief of police are aligned with us. I know the new chief, deputy chief, and many of our honorable officers strongly support this. I now call upon the leaders of the Vallejo Police Officers Association, future Vallejo Council members, future mayors, future staff, and all candidates for council and indeed the entire populace to not only support what needs to and shall be done, but to even do it faster than the anticipated 5 years. It is the goal of the city of Vallejo and the Vallejo Police Department to continue to build the progress made to date, to strengthen our relationships and advance our efforts to build trust with the community. Future members of the Vallejo Police Department will have a tremendous opportunity to be in on the ground floor of historical and wonderful changes going forward. Indeed, they will daily define exactly what those changes will look like. We, of course, recognize that an important step to this process is the pending approval of the currently proposed labor agreement. The final steps of this process are underway. We also make and take positive steps towards our new police department headquarters to be located at the Amador Street location. Many times I have said and shall that a reform is needed, but the reform shall occur. Today gives me great pleasure to be supported in those long-needed measures. It is most fitting that I must now leave you to virtually meet with our State Senator Bill Dodd and the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol to discuss the possibilities and details surrounding support for our police department. So thank you very much for your attention, and good day. Thank you very much. I'd like to bring Jason down. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Attorney General Bonta, Mr. Mayor. Thank you guys for showing up today, well, from the media and from the public. My name is Jason Taw. I'm the interim chief of police. I just have a quick statement to add before we take comments and questions. The Vallejo Police Department is committed to the completion of the remaining original 45 recommendations and the additional recommendations under this new agreement. Improvements will be made to new and existing policies and procedures. We're confident that this will increase accountability, efficiency, transparency, community partnerships, while at the same time improving relationships with the public, building mutual respect and trust from the community that we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor. With that, we can answer any questions that we have from the press.
Why is this important, sir?
Why is this important?
Yeah, why is it important?
Because it's important to address the deficit of trust that we see across California and here in Vallejo when it comes to law enforcement and the community. It's important that we promote safety while we promote justice, and that we are ambitious enough and focused enough to do both. And there has been a deficit of trust here in Vallejo, and it's important that in response, action is taken by the leadership of the city. And so there are best practices that we are very familiar with at the California Department of Justice that we share in collaborative ways or through pattern and practice lawsuits with police departments and sheriff's departments across the state who can benefit from it. And there was an opportunity here for Vallejo to benefit from those best practices, to adopt them and embrace them, and for us to be engaged in a stipulated agreement with the court to have oversight going forward to ensure the implementation of those changes. So the hope and the belief is that trust will be rebuilt. We will have constitutional policing, trust from the community, and a safe Vallejo.
As you may know, there was a TikTok posting a couple of days ago, purports to show a violent arrest. The woman claims that she was punched in the face by a Vallejo police officer. Do you have any comment on that? Would that play into this in any way?
Saw the video. It was disturbing and it was concerning. Today, we are talking about practices and policies, training, broad systemic changes that will be implemented in the Vallejo Police Department. Those patterns, those new practices, those new policies, those new trainings will affect individual incidents going forward. They won't necessarily affect something that's already happened. That individual incident will have its own accountability journey. There will be an opportunity for investigation, review, oversight, also legal accountability if necessary. So that's just beginning for that individual incident. But these practices, these changes, the goal and the belief is that they will help avoid incidents like that on a go-forward basis.
Are you surprised when you heard about this, that this apparently may still be happening amid these investigations and the actions that have been taken apart from your office? You know, you think there's maybe a general awareness within the department of these officers?
You know, the view here is to make changes going forward. You don't make changes when there's no reason to do it. There were disturbing incidents in Vallejo, multiple incidents over time, and they need to be addressed. And they are addressed most appropriately through systemic change that's embodied in the very comprehensive set of reforms in our stipulated judgment.
You talk about training, and obviously training is needed, but this department is severely understaffed. I mean, at times there's only like 3 officers, I think, on patrol. As a reporter, it's hard to get information from the Vallejo Police Department because they are busy, too busy to talk to us. How do you address that? I mean, you know, you're going to require all this training, and they're strapped.
We're going to have to do it all. And the mayor is just left to have a meeting to talk about the future of the police department here in Vallejo, including the need for resources. We need to put the resources into police departments that get the outcomes that we seek. If that means more training and more resources for the training, then that's what it means. If it means increased staffing, then that's what it means. And so these will be requirements that are in law. They will be required by a judge. They will be required by the evaluator. They will be required by our office. How they get there, we will work with them. And if more resources are needed, and we will help them seek them, and they will find them on their own as well. So that is not an excuse for not implementing these changes. These changes will be required by law and are required by law to be implemented. And so if that requires me more resources, so be it. And Vallejo will be responsible for seeking those, and we'll be a partner in that.
Chief, do you want to address that? Can you address that? The staffing challenges?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. We have a staffing shortage. There are short-term strategies that we are looking towards right now to increase that, to address that. Part of that is getting proper pay and benefits commensurate with the area. The other part of that is other retention recruitment bonuses that we are discussing and we are going to implement soon, and getting some help in the meantime, in between, while we can start to rebuild. So as the Attorney General said, that our staffing is not an excuse to not advance some of these changes forward, and we're committed to making these changes as best we can. At times, you know, and the public knows that administrative responsibilities sometimes take a second second priority towards some dynamic, unfolding, active events. But we do need to do both, because once you start getting behind administratively, it's very difficult to get caught back up.
I mean, just last night, Chief, there was a sideshow, another sideshow. I mean, the residents were sending me videos. For over an hour it was going on with no response. Finally, you guys did show up, but I mean, this is like happening night after night after night.
Yeah, we do have a lot of needs, and those needs are called in by the community. We prioritize those needs and address them as best we can with the staffing we have available. So I'm hopeful and confident that based on this agreement and some of the needs that now the public understands that we are greatly in need of, that we will get the staffing soon that we need to be able to do proper policing for our community, but also carry out these new reforms. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, there are certain universal needs that all employees have. They want to feel like they're doing something meaningful. They want to feel appreciated. They want to have proper working conditions and environment. And, of course, they want to be able to support their families. So we are working on all of those to some level. We are moving forward with a new police facility that the City Council has given us approval for. We are looking at ways to find technology that could help alleviate some of the burdens administratively. So these are all complex obstacles that aren't going to be solved quickly overnight. I do think, though, that there are things recently that have occurred that are moving in the right direction.
Chief, can you comment on any reactions to that?
As the AG kind of talked about, all of the improvements are really centered around systems. So systems for review, systems for transparency, systems to correct any type of issues that we determine that we need updating, whether that's use of force, whether that's different policies, whatever the system that we're looking at. There are certain audits and reviews and reports, data collection that's happening real time so we can see what's happening and make changes in the moment. With regard to that incident specifically, we are looking at that incident and doing a thorough review. As you guys know, when there is any type of use of force, each and every one of those is reviewed internally by our staff. If there is a formal allegation, that is reviewed externally as well through either an independent investigator or our internal affairs. That report is then given and reviewed by our staff to determine the appropriate disposition. So that is ongoing, so I can't speak to that further at this moment.
Can you actually address
So some of the policies the Attorney General had talked about, some of them were already included in our original 45 recommendations. And one that I'll speak to is in the back of every business card, we have a way for folks to either make a compliment or a complaint. We are providing those with badge numbers, so that way if there is an incident where the citizen wants to make a compliment or a complaint, that's properly it's properly kind of laid out in that card. Can you repeat the second half of your question? Yeah.
Families who are watching right now who felt like they're victims or alleged victims, you know, this is now happening currently with the people who kind of experienced this before.
Yeah. So traditionally, when police departments received a complaint, we would investigate it. We would investigate it through our internal affairs or whatever mechanism we had to investigate it. I think with these new systems, we now have randomized reviews, randomized audits. The goal is really to set a system in place where we don't have to wait for a complaint. And so that way we can do these reviews, whether it be complete reviews of use of force, complete reviews of pursuits, complete reviews of all arrests and bookings. So these are improvements that have already been instituted. We're going to more robustly explore many more of the new recommendations. So my message would be, if you feel that there's a member of our department that did something improper, please report it. My hope is that we can, with all these new implementations, can properly find some of these deficiencies before it has to rise to somebody making a complaint.
How do you address culture? I mean, what is the implementations you guys are looking for to address culture? Because, I mean, that has to be the biggest problem when you have years and years and decades of this is how we do it.
Yeah, so culture, I define culture as what somebody or what a department does every day over a long period of time. So whatever you do daily over a long period of time is really what culture boils down to me. That means when we look at culture, we're looking at kind of a totality of what's happening. So we're looking at the trends, we're looking at statistics such as number of complaints that we have. You look at other statistics such as litigation. You look at officer-involved shootings and the number of those that we have. Look at what type of critical events we have, and we watch those trends. And part of the new reforms, we have mechanisms in place to gather that data. So data is fantastic because it informs us on what areas need to be addressed. So just to kind of circle back to your question about culture, if you look at where we've come in the last 3 years, starting with the collaborative agreement in 2020 with the DOJ, all of those metrics have improved significantly. We have a lot more work, yes, but they have improved significantly. And as we move forward with this new relationship with the DOJ, I expect them to be better.
Chief, the mayor mentioned that he hopes the POA signs on to this. How would you characterize how the rank and file are feeling, and what would be your message to your officers?
I think it's difficult right now because of the staffing shortages that we have. So when you have an enormous amount of work, it's hard. When you're dealing with the public, they've been waiting for a while, and they're upset, which they should be. We should be able to provide better service than we currently can with the staffing that we have. Our staff is a little bit tired. I would say that most of them are worked mandatory holdovers continuously. So when employees get tired, they get sick. When employees get tired, they get hurt. And when they get tired, they may make mistakes. And so we want to avoid that, if at all possible, by increasing our staffing, increasing our training so that they're more informed how to deal with contemporary issues. But primarily, I think the sentiment is that we want to see, as a department, some help, whether that help is short-term with other law enforcement partners, or whether that help is, getting the ability to hire more, retain more, recruit more officers.
Chief, your department has been working with the Attorney General's office for quite some time at this point. And my understanding of the 45 reform was supposed to, or was expected to be done this summer. That obviously didn't happen. What has been the cause of these delays from your perspective? And Attorney General Bonta could weigh in as well. I think people are really curious and perhaps impatient to know why these delays and will this time be any different?
Well, part of the delay is just staffing. And what we learned from the first 3-year collaborative agreement was that you couldn't put off something that you needed to do administratively because you needed to handle something actively occurring. So we know that. We know moving forward that we have to do everything at the same time. And that's going to be challenging because if you have a field event that requires immediate supervision and staffing, however, you have a lot of administrative responsibilities that you have to keep on top of, whether that means reporting or whether that means actual work product. During the first 3 years, the work product was slowed as a result of some of the staffing issues. The other aspect of our work product was that this is all new to us, so as we started this process, none of us really knew how this was supposed to look, how it was supposed to get done. What we learned in hindsight was a lot of these reforms had to be completed at the same time. Initially, when we started our efforts, we were working it chronologically. So if you start going from number 1 all the way down to 45, what we realized was once we get to, I'm just using examples, number 10 or 11, it directly linked back to maybe number 2 or 3. And then so we'd have to go back and redo, the other reforms. So even though the total substantial compliance is 20, the other remaining are very, very close to being complete. So we were working on all of them at the same time. And I'll let the Attorney General answer from their perspective.
I think the chief laid it out. We had an MOU for 3 years. It was our hope and expectation that the 45 recommendations would be implemented. We identified that 20 were in substantial compliance. It doesn't mean that the other 25 significant progress wasn't made, but they were not yet in substantial compliance. And so it was our view that re-engaging with the city leadership and the police department, re-emphasizing the need to get those 45 recommendations implemented and talking about other areas where improvement could be made was appropriate. And to the great credit of the city and the police department, they engaged in partnership and collaboration, committed to the 45, as well as additional changes, and also going through a different process now with the teeth, so to speak, the court oversight, the evaluator, and court orders, should there be any failure to comply. But everything we've seen, we're hopeful and optimistic that these changes will be implemented to the betterment of Vallejo, to better safety, better honoring of constitutional and civil rights, more trust built. So we think today is a really important step forward, and the police department and the city have made important commitments that we believe and are optimistic that they will fully comply with.
What about negotiations a few minutes ago that your office will not investigate past cases and will only be seeking prospective injunctive relief? I want to give you several quick examples of cases that community members said they want investigated and then gave a response. Maybe not to those specific cases, but Andrew Lamar Washington was 21 years old when he was detained for 3 minutes straight in a flood control dish with about an inch of water in it, and that was by an officer that Portland Blair previously reported was allegedly a member of the badge bending clique that identified. Washington, 21 years old, died of cardiac arrest. Officers fired 31 rounds at Mario Romero as he sat in a car outside his family home. They hit him 30 times. He's not on a fire line. An alleged eyewitness said that Jeremiah Moore had his empty hands up and was naked and trembling when he was shot dead by one of the officers who killed Romero on the day that Romero was buried. And finally, the city attorney's office authorized what a judge has now ruled was the illegal destruction of evidence in multiple police buildings, including Romero's. As you know, the willful destruction of a public record, if that is indeed what occurred, is a felony pursuant to California Penal Code. Those are Government Code 6200. So my question feels that the city has been held accountable, and that thorough and fair investigations will occur, given that they've been demanding those investigations, not only of you, but of many of your predecessors for a generation.
Let me be clear about the multiple pathways that we're talking about today. We're here today talking about the stipulated judgment that's been filed in Solano County Superior Court that is all about systems, practices, policies, procedures, training, all designed to avoid all the types of incidents you've just mentioned, to prevent them, knowing that they have occurred in the past here in Vallejo, and the goal and the commitment is to ensure they never happen again. So today's announcement is about forward-looking systemic transformational change. And it does not mean that we are not looking at specific incidents and will not. There are other legal requirements that we have. We have AB 1506 requirements where we review and investigate officer-involved shootings that lead to the death of an unarmed Californian. That could include past incidents. If they happen in Vallejo, we will investigate. And so just to be clear, I don't think it's right or accurate to say we're only looking forward, we're never looking at past incidents. There's other legal triggers that would require us to be involved. We could have abuse of discretion reviews. That's part of what we do for specific incidents. That could occur. And there's also a pathway through district attorneys and other existing systems to review specific incidents. So it is not true that the specific incidents you mentioned do not have a pathway for investigation, review, and accountability. Each of them does. And whether it involves us or not, there is a pathway. So just to be clear about how what we're talking about today, and they're all important. Past acts of injustice or alleged injustice should be reviewed and assessed, evaluated, and there should be a final review and a judgment and a decision. And we should also be committed to helping ensure they never happen again. So you're not always waiting after the fact, after an injustice has occurred, someone has been hurt or harmed, laws have been broken, and trying to do your best to find a remedy. We want to avoid it from happening in the first place. So one of the most powerful components of what we're doing today is you will never hear about incidents like you just mentioned, where there is tragedy and pain, because we will have avoided them. It's hard to measure prevention, but when you have best practices like the ones that are being committed to by the Vallejo Police Department and the city, there will be much fewer and hopefully none of the incidents that you mentioned going forward.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so other than Monterosa criminal investigation, are there any ongoing criminal investigations by your office into past Vallejo police deaths?
We're looking into Monterosa, of course, as you well know, and for other pending investigations, I can't comment on those right now, so I'll have to leave it at that.
And also, can you talk about access, as well as requesting some of these documents has been a challenge from myself and other organizations have discussed that, although we receive the documents and reports, they're not easily ordered or they're unorganized. And that's an issue. Can you talk about how you all plan to deal with that?
You know, again, the changes and the commitments involved in the stipulated judgment today are comprehensive from dealing with stops, searches, seizures, use of force, unbiased policing, community engagement, community policing, also transparency, engagement with the public, sharing information that's shareable and that is consistent with existing law, including all the PRA and other laws that lead to requests being made and items being provided. I think, of course, that there's the ongoing issue of staffing, and the interim chief has indicated his commitment to addressing it and making sure that you're doing everything at once. You're responding to the most urgent needs of the community when it comes to public safety, and you're providing documents when requested appropriately by the press and by members of the public and everything in between. You got to have all the balls juggling at the same time. And you need to have the personnel to do that as well. So our best practices include transparency and openness with the public, including the very important press corps.
Coming back to delays in implementing reform, the mayor mentioned offhand negotiations with the Vallejo Police Officers Association. Have those played any role in delaying and implementing that contract? Is that played
I don't have a line of sight to that. We work with the city leadership on the MOU. We had expectations as to the timeline for that MOU, and we have expectations for the implementation of the stipulated judgment that we're here to talk about today. So there's a lot that happens: staffing, negotiations, bargaining. We kind of stay at the top where we're enforcing the ultimate outcomes and the results. And there's a lot of different ways to achieve them. We leave that to the city leadership and the leadership of the police department to find those best pathways. We're just focused on the results.
Chief, would you be able to weigh in on that? Have negotiations with DPOA delayed implementing any of these reforms?
I wouldn't characterize it as delay. I mean, it is a process. When we make changes to policy that affects working conditions, we have to engage in meeting and conferring. So that seemingly might be characterized, I think, as a delay, but that is just one step in the process when we do these reforms and we update these policies. So that is just a piece of the process that is time-consuming. Like the entire process takes time and takes a lot of hard work.
Thank you all for coming today.